美国12月15日，让我们来看几段有意思的采访影片。首先来看共和党前总统候选人米特·罗姆尼，他在 CNN 的节目上声称 Maga 就是共和党，川普就是共和党，更预测2028年共和党的总统提名人会是 J.D. 范斯。不过对于川普的新内阁提名，罗姆尼也坦言，这是一群不寻常的人选，不是我会选择的人，但我输了，他赢了。
I have a lot to ask you about a long life in public service, but I do want to start with just a couple questions about what's going on now. And the first one is, what lessons are you taking away from the election results?
Donald Trump won. He won overwhelmingly. He said what he was going to do, and that's what he's doing. I mean, people are saying, oh, I don't like this appointment or this policy that he's talking about, but those are the things he said he was going to do when he ran. So you can't complain about someone who does what he said he was going to do. And I agree with him on a lot of policy fronts. I disagree with him on some things. But it's like, okay, give him a chance to do what he said he's going to do and see how it works out.
This is not a traditional cabinet, the nominees. I'm sure you have some feelings. I know you're not going to be voting on them, and I know you're loath to talk about individual ones, but I'm wondering if there's a perception you have of the people he is putting into his administration, which are certainly very different than his first administration.
Well, a very famous book talked about Abraham Lincoln choosing a team of rivals. This is a team of people who are very, very different, extraordinarily different backgrounds, different perspectives on issues, in some cases, I think, even than the president. So an unusual collection of individuals, not the people I would have chosen, but I lost. He won, all right? I'd like to revisit that and win, but I didn't get that chance. And so these are the kind of people he wants around him. He's entitled to that. Now, the Senate has a responsibility to make sure that these people are legitimate, that there's no skeleton that could be an embarrassment to them or the country, and to also determine if they're qualified for the position that they've been nominated to. And I expect them to carry out that responsibility with conscience and diligence.
Trump has made it clear that he wants to go after his political opponents. He's talking about members of the January 6th committee should go to jail. Are you worried at all about being a target for retribution, you or members of your family?
No, actually, I've been pretty clean throughout my life. I'm not particularly worried about criminal investigations. And I don't know how much, by the way, of what the president says is hyperbole, because there was a lot of this person ought to be jailed and that person ought to be jailed that was said during the last two campaigns. But I think President Trump is likely to try and focus on the future. People who committed crimes, I'm sure, will be prosecuted, but I think that's few and far between.
So let's take a look at your life. You were famously the son of George Romney, a Michigan governor, a 1968 presidential candidate, a HUD secretary. We were watching the 1964 Republican convention, as we do in our spare time here, and we came across your dad's speech. He said something interesting, kind of warning. He didn't mention Barry Goldwater, but he was kind of warning about the power of personality as opposed to the strength of character. And let's run a little bit of that.
The strongest personality on earth cannot deal with the problems of this nation except upon the basis of correct principles.
Doesn't sound all that different from some things you've been saying.
Well, I haven't seen that clip, by the way, and he obviously was a man of great energy and passion. Mm-hmm. That's what comes across to me in that clip. But also I think it's a fair warning, which is that personality is important, and character, in my view, is actually perhaps the most critical thing we choose in our leaders, whether in a state, in a university, in a church, or in a White House. Policy, bad policy, we can live with. The country's overcome bad policy in the past, and it will in the future. Bad character is something we haven't had to live with, and so it's important in our leaders of all kinds that we have people who are honest and virtuous and direct in a way that is not based upon personal interest, but is based instead on the national interest. So that's what I hope we find in the next administration. I'm, as you know, not a supporter of President Trump's. I didn't support him in this election. Didn't the last time he ran either. Largely for matters of character, and I hope we see better in the coming years.
可以看出， 对于像罗姆尼这样的传统建制派共和党人来说，尽管依旧心存芥蒂，但在经历这3次美国大选的冲击后，他们似乎已经接受建制派日渐式微，川普和 Maga 主导共和党的事实了。接下来再让我们来看川普政府效率部部长伊隆·马斯克的母亲梅伊·马斯克的一段采访影片。在当天的福克斯新闻节目中，梅伊强调称，尽管自己养育了3个孩子，但她从来没觉得养孩子是一种牺牲。
That's something I wanted to talk to you about. So your children, by the way, your son has 12. Next to he's the only one that beat my husband on the cabinet with the number of children. My husband has 9, Pete Heggs has 7, but yours has 12. And you were recently getting a lot of attention because there was a comedian online who said, listen, I get it. People don't want to have, they're talking about the birth rate, which your son talks a lot about it declining and the problems for humanity with that. And you said to his response about it being too expensive to have kids, you said, that's not the way to think about this. Explain.
Well, you know, when I had my children, we were in a 2-bedroom small apartment overlooking a garage. And then the next year, I have the second child, we had an apartment with a view. And then by the third child, we could get a 2-bedroom house. And you just, you know, as you move on, you start doing better and better. But people, you know, you don't have to go to the movies. You don't have to go out for dinner. You can just spend time with the most wonderful gifts you can ever have.
Exactly.
As a children.
You didn't feel like you were sacrificing.
Never. It didn't occur to me. It seems to be a popular term, but it didn't occur to me.
That's right, because children are an intrinsic value in and of themselves.
Yes.
And you're now seeing your son having this kind of success. How do you raise a billionaire?
Well, that wasn't his goal. His goal was to save the planet and then explore another planet, and so that civilization can be saved.
Of course.
And so he will need that billion.
Does Elon's kids? We were just having this discussion about the phone and how technology can interfere with creativity. There's a purpose behind it, but it can also interfere with creativity. It can be a time suck. It can take people away from relational goals that they must have. So what is your thought on the phone and when children should have the phone?
First of all, I don't care because they're not my children.
Wow,
I'm having a great
lesson
time.
1 on grandmas. Okay, but if you had a child right now, what would be your thoughts on the phone?
Well, when my daughter had her twins and I was helping her with them, then I lived with them and then I moved to be near them, I said, we can't have them on the iPads and the iPhones all the time, until I had to look after them, and I said, take them, especially on a plane. You give them.
There's definitely a place for it, for sure.
Yes.
Tell me more about Elon Musk as a child.
He was just a shy child. I said he was a genius. Nobody believed me because he was shy, you know. And Kimball and Tosca, more outgoing. And just to let you know, Tosca has her own streaming platform called Passionflix, and she's now doing an all-nighters doing a vampire romance series. So
okay.
I just run it by you because we always talk about my 2 sons.
But you have other kids. Yeah, I love that.
I have a daughter who's dynamic.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, your son is poised to make a huge difference in government and the way we think about it. We're excited. I know my husband is excited to hopefully get to work with him as well.
此外，随着川普新政府即将上台，维吉尼亚州州长格伦杨金似乎也已经准备好在移民问题上大展拳脚了。在当天的汉尼体秀节目中，杨金誓言要与移民执法局合作，打击庇护城市，确保当选总统川普的移民政策能够落实。
Joining us now with more on his plan to ban sanctuary cities. The governor, the great Commonwealth of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, is with us. Governor, welcome back. Tell me about your plans.
Sean, thank you. First of all, this is just basic common sense. There's no controversy here. If you are not in this country legally and you commit a crime, you get a one-way ticket out of here. And it is so refreshing to hear a border czar do the job that a border czar must do. Thank you, Tom Homan. Today in Virginia, we made it very clear. I presented a clear pathway for us to first make sure that localities, mayors, boards of supervisors, and city councils must comply with ICE. And second of all, if you don't, I'm going to take away your funding. Bottom line is Virginians have been suffering. Every state is a border state, and we've seen the Biden administration unleash chaos. 5 Virginians dying every day from fentanyl overdoses. But even worse, literally criminals who are in jail in our criminal justice system being let loose and then committing horrendous crimes, sexual assaults of young women, murders, and just recently, of course, a Honduran illegal immigrant who had been in 29 encounters with law enforcement, released because Fairfax County did not want to cooperate with ICE, who then subsequently commits a violent rape. This must stop, and I can't tell you how much it pleases me to know that we have a president and a border czar who are going to work with us to put a stop to this chapter that has been a horrific reminder that we are a nation of laws, and if we do not enforce the laws and protect our citizens, we are not doing the primary job we are elected to do.
When your opening statement, you said if there are people in this country that are illegal, that have committed criminal acts, but isn't the act of entering the country without permission and authority, isn't that in and of itself illegal? Doesn't that make everyone that entered this country illegal without proper documentation, permission?
Sean, if we just begin with the reality that in our prisons and jails, there are thousands upon thousands of illegal immigrants who have committed violent crimes. In Virginia, in our state corrections departments, we have nearly 1,000 illegal immigrants who have committed a violent crime. We are fully cooperating with ICE, and we will make sure that those people are deported. And this is the first place to start. Then we recognize, as disclosed by ICE, that there's 650,000 committed felons in America today who we don't know where they are, 13,000 murderers, 15,000 of those guilty of sexual assaults and rape, who are in America today. We've got to find them, and we've got to give them that one-way ticket out of here. There is a big job ahead of us, but as you have seen, governors across this country, particularly Republican governors, are locked armed to work with President Trump, to work with Tom Homan, to make sure that we are keeping those citizens that we are responsible for safe.
All right, so what do you do in the case of, let's say, California, our old friend Governor Gavin Newsom? It's a sanctuary state. Los Angeles just had a vote. They reiterated that they're a sanctuary city. The same with San Francisco. These are their stated policies. They have pledged not to help in any way. Comments by Governor Newsom indicate that he will want to challenge Donald Trump in court every step of the way on issues he disagrees with. But yet the authority to remove illegal immigrants that are in this country illegally, that would lie with the federal government, not with the state of California. They have jurisdiction in that regard. So what do you do in that case when there's going to be that conflict?
Well, let me first begin with Americans need to stand up and make their voices heard. And what we saw on November 5th was an overwhelming statement that Americans are tired of the liberal left progressive policies of putting criminals first and victims last. And on top of that, putting the rights of illegal immigrants ahead of the rights of citizens. And so step one is Californians need to wake up and understand what exactly Gavin Newsom and the rest of the leadership there is doing. Second of all, I do believe that what Tom Homan is expressing is, in fact, federal jurisdiction over so many of these circumstances. And finally, I do believe that states like California that are not standing up for the safety of their citizens are going to continue to see a mass exodus like they have to states that are standing up for their citizens. There has been a massive migration in this country. where Americans recognize that they want to build their lives in states that will stand for liberty and freedom, that will stand for safety, that will create jobs, that will lower taxes and respect them as individuals. And this is so clear to the point where you're even seeing Democrat governors finally recognize that this is common sense and this is the way that the nation needs to go in order to ensure our safety.
Do you agree with me the odds are very high with known terrorists in this country that they are likely plotting, planning, and scheming a terror attack inside the continental United States, and that is likely to happen?
Sean, I'm terribly concerned with the known number of terrorists that have come into this country. Listen, I am the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and we have the largest number of national security assets, from national intelligence to military to the largest naval base in the world. And we are on high alert all the time with regards to the threat that the open border has presented to us. We must be vigilant, and the first step is to make sure that we're sending people one way out of this country when they commit a crime.
毫无疑问，随着川普第二任期即将开始，地方共和党人都在摩拳擦掌，准备借着川普重返白宫的东风大展拳脚。那么最后，再让我们来看一段 CNN 的采访影片。一位终身民主党员和健康自由倡导妈妈表示，今年选举，她因为川普对小罗伯特·甘乃迪的支持而投票给了他。而当川普宣布小甘乃迪担任卫生与公共服务部长时，他甚至还感动地流下了喜悦的泪水。
What was your reaction when you saw that President Trump had named him to this incoming position?
I cried. Many other people cried. We were so excited.
Guys, it's happening.
I was, had been a lifelong Democrat.
In this election, did you end up voting Republican?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of our moms didn't necessarily just run to the right. They felt abandoned by the left. And when the right said, hey, we're here for you on health freedom, they said that's something that I can align with.